this is a woman, she came for shingles. There's some hormonal issues, which we'll find out about later. And she reckons that stress at work triggered the shingles. And I would say that, you know, I mean, I'm sure you probably know this already, that shingles usually only comes when you've already had some form of stress or illness. So I've seen people who've had strokes and then they had shingles, or people who've had like a nasty chronic, I don't know, flu type thing, and then they had shingles. So, you know, I'd be interested to know exactly what happened before. And in fact, it'd be interesting if it were my patient, I'd like to know what her job is. And also there's this idea about the bad breath. I mean, it sounds like one of those typical case histories whereby I've put this all up front, but it sounds like what happened is that the patient came from one thing and then gradually you discovered another thing and then gradually you discovered another thing, which often happens, to be honest. That's not unusual. So I'm hoping that you can see them.
Yeah.
There we go. So there, but really shocking on the hands. Emmerich also gave us some lovely pictures of needles. Look at that. You don't often get that in a case history, I tell you. And this is as they're getting better, second treatment, and then third treatment.
Remarkable.
Pretty much gone. Amazing, eh? I think that's very impressive. What do we know about shingles? Well, we know that it is incredibly painful. Some kind of, if I were to interpret this in Chinese medicine terms, I would say that there is a lot of fire. I'm also interested in the fact that it's on the skin, and it looked like it was on the inner arm and the outer arm. You know, I don't think we can say exactly what channels it was on at the beginning, but I did notice that later on, you mentioned, Emmerich, that it was more on the sort of lung and colon. So whenever we have anything that is an issue on the skin, then we also want to have a look at the location. So I would really be sort of noting exactly where those lesions were. If I look at the other things, I've got some hormonal issues. There's a sort of longer story to this, but basically the idea is that it's an asymptomatic PCOS. I think that has got to do with the spleen, or definitely the earth. The stress at work is some kind of wood idea, and this bad breath, bad digestion, it sounds like a stomach fire thing to me. And then we've got this hyperlaxity of ligaments. I mean, that's got to be some kind of wood thing. I mean, you might say it's the gallbladder. I don't know. Some texts make a differentiation, but I would just keep it vague as wood. Let's have a look at her Bazi chart, just very basic, and have a look at what her strengths and weaknesses are, so that we can see how we could help her in a kind of more long-term way. Because obviously Emmerich's done a great job with what she was coming with, and it'd be nice to see maybe why she's got what she's got, and you know, those kind of things. So I did her Bazi, and then I also did the percentages, and I've laid it out here with the idea that you might be able to understand what's going on. So this is her day master here. Her day master is wood yang, it's Jia, gallbladder and earth. So I've also put the names of the things in case that's useful. And then I've written down I've put the reasons why I've put the numbers inside the circles on the outside. Each one of these stems is worth 100. And each one of these hidden stems is also worth 100. This is a very easy chart because in the hidden stems, it doesn't have proportions. It doesn't have 20s and 60s and all sorts of stuff like that. So that's what these squares on the outside are. They're like my workings. And then we've got a percentage that we multiply it by, depending on the branch of the month. So what you get is this situation here, which you can see she's got absolutely nothing in the earth at all, which is interesting given that we also have seen quite a few earth things in her case history just so far without looking any further. maybe not the presenting complaint, but, you know, my idea about the hormonal stuff, the PCOS, and also this whole idea about the digestion, which has been going on for ages. So, you know, I can see that that's an area of weakness, basically, when there's that much zero there. And the other thing that's really interesting I find here is the fact that there's like the biggest amount is in the metal. So I would suggest that she has a propensity to having some kind of weak earth and having problems with metallic stuff, you know, too much metal. Maybe, you know, maybe that's why shingles rather than something else. In fact, one of the things that we ask ourselves right at the beginning when we take a case history is, you know, and it may be not so relevant, but it will be relevant with the next one, is, you know, when was it that everything felt different? When was it that there was this feeling of nothing felt the same from that moment on? So when I look at this, then one of the things I want to look at is, or I want to think about is, how could I solve this problem? You know, a little bit like when you're trying to solve a pulse picture. And so probably what you try and do is you would try and kind of move the metal into the wood, and then you might even try to move the wood into the earth, something like that. So the next thing I did was I looked at the day master, which is Jia, and I looked at the month branch, which is Yo. And so I've got wood, which is born in autumn. So that's not a good idea. It's not a great situation. Then I wanted to find out if the chart was rooted. And the way to find out if the chart is rooted, I wrote it down so that we could remember, is that the same element as the day master is in the hidden stems. And there is some root because we do have one hidden stem, E, which is wood. So it is rooted, but not massively because it's only got one. And then the other thing is that it's unbalanced. There's only one of the phases that is zero. So it's balanced if there's no phases that are zero. We definitely have a zero phase in the earth there. So we know that she's not born in the right season for her. That puts her in a bit of a sort of negative situation. We know that she is slightly rooted, and we know that it's a little bit unbalanced. As I looked at what phases support the day master and what phases control the day master. The day master is wood, so itself and what feeds it supports it, and the other ones control it. And when if we even just basically add up those numbers, we see that wood and water makes 150 and all the other ones make 350. So that does not make a very good, very strong day master, if you want. So basically what we need to do is we need to strengthen the day master. And also, I mentioned this before, circulate all that metal, which is just ridiculous. On the other hand, she is very well resourced. She's got a lot of water to feed into her wood, which is a good sign because that means that whatever happens, she should be able to spring back reasonably well. So here I wrote down the thing that I just said, could think of ways of moving the metal into wood and maybe also the wood into the earth to make the whole of the 5-element picture flow. So after that, I had a quick look at the birth year, and I noticed that it's a common yearly meeting in fire. A yearly meeting means not very much, it's not particularly important. All of these are yin. So she's got a very sort of fire, water, kind of yin type chart. It's a very, very earthy year, and she's extremely empty in earth. And the fact that there's also been quite a lot of fire and dryness, you know, metal and dryness is too much in her Batsa, and fire is too little in her Batsa. So I'm kind of looking at these thinking, whatever has happened has hit her in places where she was likely to get hit fundamentally.
So Deborah, what would you have started with? Would you have started with the kind of clearing of the heat or the support of the blood underneath, or what would have been your tack?
I would definitely have cleared heat in the first treatment because of the fact that you're coming with a shingles situation. So I would think about all the points that I could use to clear heat. But I would also want to support the body as much as possible. So probably I would have done something like, I don't know, colon 11, which is a heat clearing, do 14, which is heat clearing, And then I'd want to support her route as much as possible. And in this case, because I know that her year chart is kidney and fire, I'd probably go for some stomach points. I'd probably do stomach 37 and 39, or maybe stomach 36, you know, something like that. Yeah. And this is also before Emmerich found out about anything to do with the PCOS or whatever it is, and before he found out about the digestive stuff at all. So I'd probably just leave it at that if that's what she told me.